Hello. Hello, everybody. Yeah, new background for everybody. This is just a different part in the house. Catching up. How I've been? I've been very good. Very good, actually. Chilling. Oh, you haven't finished the book yet? Ah! Okay, that's okay. We'll talk about it. Stella's spot is this chair. So, I decided to start the day with the song from which the book we are talking about gets its title. So that is the Beale Street Blues by Louis Armstrong, based on Beale Street, Mississippi, which I know we shared this, our last convo, just I did the research. Beale Street, Mississippi, so that is the street that the book is named after. And that is the song, If Beale Street Could Talk. It's called the Beale Street Blues, so if anyone else wants to listen to it, it's pretty great. I really like Louis Armstrong, so I'm surprised I hadn't heard it. But yes, oh, hello, Rex Blog, a newbie. Guys, we have a new member. Everyone say hello. Yes, you did, Maddie. I saw that. I retweeted it, and that's why I was like, oh, I gotta find this song. So, Thina, we will talk about the movie, but let's save that for probably the second half of our conversation. The first half of our conversation, now that we finished, hopefully, let's just start the way you know that I like to start, which is one-word thoughts about the entirety of the book. I know we did this last time, but since now everyone hopefully is caught up or has had the opportunity to read more, maybe this original thought has changed or maneuvered. I've got little notes written here. And I have a couple of quotes I actually saved. I'm going to reiterate my thoughts about this, not only this novel, but also this, the movie. Wicked Mar, we're on the same page. Yeah, intimate. Beautifully intimate. The volume's low right now. Can you guys hear me? Because it might be, is that better? Kind of tilted, but I hope that's okay. Intimate, frustrating. That's, I think, something that we were supposed to get from the book. Welcome everyone for joining the dark side. We occasionally have banana bread. The whole part of Tish's mom going to Puerto Rico, I think that part, unfinished. Ooh, that's a good word. Life, heavy, beautifully tragic. Yes, I should read more. I'm reading something else, but as soon as I can focus, I'll catch up. Catch up. I can't describe the book in words. It's very hard. Yes, this book was very much, I think, a lived experience, which I thought was incredible. So I was watching a scene breakdown with Barry Jenkins, and the scene that he's deep, love that, infinite, love that, strong, she's strong, yeah. It's a scene breakdown with Barry Jenkins, and it's a scene in the movie that in the book we see played out, but not in the same way. We hear about it from Tish, sorry. We hear about it from Tish, but we didn't like go into it as much. And that's the scene where they go get the loft from the really nice Jewish man in the Lower East Side. In the movie, that character is played by Dave Franco. Sorry, played by Dave Franco. And I watched something online about the breakdown of Barry Jenkins breaking down that scene. And there's something immersive that he intended to bring to that scene specifically. And I feel this book does that as well. It really brings us into this family who's going through this kind of tragedy. And then the resilience that they not only have to display, but have no other choice but to display. The ability to continue rising with every obstacle. Really quickly, I told you I've been reading Stoicism and some other Stoic authors, Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. And Marcus Aurelius has an entire quote about the impediment to action becomes the action. Whatever stands in the way becomes the way. So you see that perfectly exemplified in this novel, where you see Joseph, Tish's father, when he's having those conversations with Frank, and Frank is like, what are we going to do, man? He's like, I don't know what we're going to do, but I know what we need to do, and we need to get that money. And he's like, but how? He's like, that's not a problem. We've never had money, and we always found a way to get it. So we can find a way to get it again. Oh my gosh. Really quickly, I put Stella's water bowl up there, because for some reason, when she's like elevated, she drinks more water. So yeah, little. Tish's love is one of the most beautiful things ever. It's just so pure and true. Again, to the extra scene at the end of the movie, although it had me in tears, is unnecessary. I agree, Cal. I think I agree. Knowing that last scene where it feel that epilogue, so to speak, it feels. I want to know why that was added. You know, what was the artistic decision in making that? Yeah, but I love the way the book ended. But I love that the movie kind of laid it out a little bit for us, because in a way the book allows us to say, okay, well, they're going to figure it out, whereas the movie forces us. Whereas the movie forces us to recognize the reality in which she's going to be living for the next, was it 6 years? Tessa hasn't seen it yet, so I don't want to spoil it for her. But I think it's the movie giving us the visual image of what that life for them is going to be like in the beginning. And I think that may be important. But I would, if I ever get to work with Barry Jenkins or I ever get to meet him, I would love to just ask that question. Just know Stella's going to knock that bad boy. She stopped. She doesn't do that. She doesn't knock her water, because that's like her thing. Even when it's empty, she just starts meowing and drinking my water, and that's when I'm like, oh, she needs more water. The cinematography from that movie is one of the best you've ever seen. Definitely one of my faves that came out in 2018. Rita, did you see Moonlight? That was his first film that really brought out, and Moonlight had this same intimate quality. And I have to say, I love his style, and yeah, I agree. Beautiful film. Just a beautiful film. Is this a real story? Yes and no. It is a real story because it has happened time and time and time again in America. Is this a specific story, Tish and Fonny? I don't think they're specifically two people that we could trace to today. But the story is real. It happens every day in this country. And that's one of the big things that Black Lives Matter and this entire movement is really trying to not only bring attention to, but end. I felt that Barry Jenkins really wanted to bring to screen the reality of those situations in life. I agree. It's a love story, but not only about the typical love between a man and a woman. It's the love in the family and also love between a mother and daughter. And then Lorena, I'm going to go a step further. It's also about black love. And that's something that James Baldwin talks a lot about. Yeah, it's beautiful. While we're on this train, While we're on this train, I wrote something down. So Barry Jenkins, I've watched a few interviews with him about this movie because as you guys know, I love making movies. So I love when I find out this is the source material and then someone made something equally brilliant. I want to know what that process was. Anyway, he's talking about his knowledge of Baldwin when he decided to write it. It's a really cool interview, short, like 6 or 7 minutes, with Trevor Noah. And he talks about how James Baldwin often talks about two things in his writings, whether it be in his novels or his essays. As you may know, more famously, an essayist, very famous for his essays. And The Fire Next Time is a combination of essays that I've mentioned we're probably going to read. But he talks about romance and interpersonal relationships, sensuality and love. And then he also talks about systemic injustice. And this story, I'm literally quoting Barry Jenkins in this interview. He's like, this story was a vehicle to talk about both of those things. And I think that's actually like a really incredible. I honestly think it's a masterful work. Like, I just think it's so beautiful, and I got the same feelings reading it as I did watching it, and I loved how little the script changed from the movie to the book, or book to the movie, right? Okay, sorry, I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to go back in. I hope you guys watch the movie soon. My cat and okay. Moonlight art. We love a director full of talent. Mahershala Ali is definitely one of my favorite actors of all time. I love watching his work. I agree. And why Beale Street is described as a legacy to the black community. Exactly. The family love is so intense in this book. Exactly. I love the tenderness as black love tends to be portrayed as harsh. Exactly. This tenderness is so important to this story. And then speaking to this, there was another. Did I read this in an article? Yeah, it was an article on the Atlantic. If I do that, give me one sec. I should have done this here and done that there. It would have been easier. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. I was really bummed at the conversation between Fonny and Joseph when he asked permission wasn't in the movie. Yeah, but at the same time, I like that it wasn't. We were seeing this story from Tish's perspective, and she doesn't know what was said. She even says it in the novel. She's like, things that men say to each other, right? Only things that men do, and that's fine. They have that. And that's another thing I recognize is, like, in this novel, there is that, I don't know if it's the early 70s or something Baldwin's trying to talk about, but there's that separation between men and women that he speaks of frequently and alludes to in the difference in the worlds that they navigate. Differences in the worlds that they navigate. And I think that would take away from that separation of Fonny's world and her world and then their world together. Because that question isn't part of, like, it is. Also, like, old school to ask permission to marry. But, yeah, that would have been a cool scene to see. Oh, yeah, the Spanish restaurant. I love that community. And the store lady, we should all be more like her. She's an example of what to do with your privilege. Like, stand up, say something, and let them know that you're watching. I like that. Oh, hi, Moose Girl of the Multiverse. That is a dope handle name. And I guess when you say handle, you have to say handle name. Welcome. Today we are discussing If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. We've read it in its entirety, and many of us have seen the movie. Reich's blog, I haven't posted anything on that photography account in a long time. It's AC3_photos, but I kind of lost the login, so I have to redo that. But yeah, it's up there. No reading ahead, Lexi. I'm kidding. If you want to, go ahead, by all means, and then you could reread it with us. Like, that's an also very cool thing to do. So yeah, it's just one of those things that this novel, I feel like you had to also, like, sit with it a bit. You know? I have to do this. The movie, I don't know if it's on Netflix, and I don't know if it's one of the films that they've been starting to, like, stream for free, because they've been doing that with a lot of really cool films lately. Camila, we will talk about quotes. I know I only marked 2, because I can remember the pages that they were on. All right, so I'm going to read this section, but I'll point when it's the quote that I highlighted. Frank is light and thinner. I don't think you can describe my father as handsome, but you can describe Frank that way. I don't mean to be putting him down when I say that, because that face has paid and is paying a dreadful price. People make you pay for the way you look, which is also the way you think you look. And what time writes in a human face is the record of that collision. What that is, what time writes in a human face is the record of that collision. I just think it's so dope, right? Yeah, no throwing shoes at people for reading. Anyone else here who just wanted to punch Officer Bell? He almost destroyed a family for his white pride. And actually, I would say it's for his fear and insecurity. Fear is a theme in this novel, and James Baldwin often talks about fear as like a precursor to all of this hatred and misunderstanding, and not even a precursor, a necessity for this type of violence. Fear and self-loathing, I would say. And he says it in that article. I don't want to paraphrase him, but he was talking about that the day that white people can fully love and accept themselves, racism will be gone. And the need to put black people down won't be there. Now that was horribly paraphrased. Obviously, he wrote it much more beautifully, and it was very well stated. But that's what I garnered from that. So it's interesting. You see that theme very much in there. The fear present in wandering the world. And we have to talk about the time in America. This was in the early 1970s. In my watching interviews with Barry Jenkins, he spoke about this. He was like, in this time, I wrote in my little notes up here. So in the 1970s, post the Voting Rights Act of 1964, post the Civil Rights Act of 1964, post Martin Luther King's assassination, like the civil rights movement had made steps forward and black people were arriving. That's what he described it as. He was like, it was a time when there was that was, all right, we're here now. We have our rights. And this period of time was full of the system finding other ways to enact oppression and enforce their power. So that's why we see what happened here. This police officer who had this hurt ego and felt the need for revenge. These days, of course, everybody knows everything. That's why so many people are lost. This book was so eye-opening. This is the reason I love this book club. I was learning new things about society, myself included, especially in times like this. I think it's needed. Thanks, Odin Draven 18. I agree. Like, books are that. Education is that. I mean, you know I can talk about this forever, but I've always said, based on conversations I've had, that a huge misconception in humanity is that our eyes look forward. Our eyes don't look forward. Our eyes look backwards in time. Because that's all we can see, what's come before us. We can't see what's happening tomorrow. But if we use what's come before us to try to steer us in the proper direction, maybe we'll do better. And that's what these are. They're legitimate memories, teachings for us to learn from and use, and then progress. Not just leave. One of my favorite definitions of leadership is a two-part definition. And the one part is helping a group of people achieve their potential in, completing an objective. And then also the second part that I really like about this definition, it's the Army's definition of leadership. The United States Army's definition. It's that it's not only just doing that, it's also working to improve the system as well. So within that, we can't forget, it's not just doing the right thing, it's also making the whole system better. Fears at the core of all conflict, internal and external. Very cool. Oh, thank you, Luna. Racism, fear, isolation, shame, judgment, morality. Very, very big themes. Thank you, Maddie. And the isolation that Fawny feels, the isolation that Tish discovers, the isolation that I think we all I had this kind of dark discovery, but not a few years ago, where what movie made me recognize this? Oh, Boyhood. I was watching the movie Boyhood, Richard Linklater. If you haven't seen it, it's brilliant. It was shot over the course of 12 years, which I think is crazy. But I remember sitting at the end of the movie and recognizing how lonely life is. You are the only person to live your life. But in that is what community offers, and love, and art, and the things that bring us together, is that yes, life is lonely, but we can create times and places where we recognize we're not all in this alone. I'm gonna write that down. Just give me a sec. Cool. Lonely but not alone. Unfortunately, I've come face to face with the white cops abusing and arresting black men for being black. It might be what makes this book hard for me. Not sure, but yeah, I hate that character. You guys never really hear me say stuff like this, but for Officer Bell, that character, literally, that guy. What was my first thought? But I was white, I think. Oh yeah, I don't think that was the case. I think it's alluded that he does abuse his power in many other ways than the ways that we witness. And one of those ways is also by creating a lineup of all white people except for one black man, when you know that the woman stated she was raped by a black man, and then having her pick the one guy out of the lineup. Like, that is just as bad. I really get confused on how we find out what books we're supposed to read. Official Millie Latham. Thank you for that. There are a couple of Twitter accounts that you can follow. Rosende Reads Daily and Rosende Reads Community. I try to do my best to stay updated on the Instagram. I am not very good at social media. I need to get better. I will try to be better about that, but this community of people are all very open and excited to share what we're reading, and you can always probably look at Twitter and find it if you hashtag Rosende Reads and ask. But thank you for being here. Morality isn't as black and white as people think. A person's choice depends on a number of factors. For example, Baldwin doesn't present the idea of Joseph and Frank stealing as something to be judged, but rather he uses it as an example of ways which the systemic racism disempowers black people. Which, yeah, empowered people make empowered people. True. I've also realized through the books we've read, you need to stand up for what you believe in. Even if you have to stand alone, it's better to stand up for something than to not stand at all. I choose certain books to kind of instill that message as well. My country, I don't know where you are in the world, but my country's going through a very difficult time. And if people don't stand, we will all be forced to sit one day. So, Boyhood and the Before trilogy are brilliant masterpieces. Linklater is brilliant. felt the most powerful statement of the whole book was, these captive men are the hidden price for a hidden lie. The righteous must be able to locate the damned. Oh, yes. One of the last few pages, page like 185. Yeah, that was a beautiful quote. What's my current read other than the book club? If that's something people are interested in that. In the mornings, I've been doing these 3 readings where I read like a daily philosophy thing. And then I'm reading Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. And then I read 1 page from Teachings of the Buddha. That's how I start my day. Not every day. I don't want to lie and be like, I am so good at routine. But it's something I've been trying to do more. So it's been nice. I can post pictures of those books if you want them. My favorite line was when Tish's mother said that you got to get Fani out of there. I don't care what we have to do it. It's pure love and acceptance towards Fani, the love of her daughter's life. And they understand, and I think that's what I'm talking about. In this systemic indoctrination that each American citizen receives, whether or not they be black or white, that indoctrination is different. But it's still an indoctrination, all the same. And in this indoctrination, to create this system, we are taught to refuse to see the circumstances and only to see the event or the result or the final. We're not forced to see all the things that could lead someone to a certain lifestyle or a certain choice or a certain decision. We're forced to just see the consequences of that decision and then blame that person, not the consequences of the system that put them in that position. So it is incredibly hard work to wake up in this country. And it requires a steadfast dedication and like an understanding that it's never done. And I will make many, many mistakes. People should not be afraid of their government. Government should be afraid of their people. Rita, that is not from the book. That is from V for Vendetta. I'm kidding. Okay, I'll post those books. Can we read some Nietzsche in the future? Ooh. Should we read philosophy in the future? We haven't done that yet. And I haven't read a lot of philosophy. I haven't read much, so it'd be kind of cool. Okay. I thought the only person who knows at the same time. Oh, Becoming. Awesome. I think it's in my bookshelf. If it's not, it's supposed to be. So I have to get that. Oh, guys, we are graced with the presence of my good friend Josh Van Keteraman again. He's going to be moving out to California sometime, so I'm very excited about that. But he's also that novelist I've spoken about, who wrote that amazing book about the amazing thing he did. Justice for the Groveland 4, Accidental Activists. Check it out. Philosophy. Still hoping we get to read some books by disabled writers. Yes, Lexi, I will put that on my list. Thank you. Let me write that down before I forget. Oh, shit. And I'm starting the Book of Five Rings, too. It's another... Sorry. That's in my pile of morning reads. And any recommendations in that category would be very welcomed. Well, I don't read them like these are philosophy things. So this is literally just like a daily quote to start the day with a small description about it. So today's quote is from Seneca, who's one of the, there are like 2 or 3 people, from my understanding so far, that kind of like built Stoicism. Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius was a big practicer of Stoicism, and well, he would never align himself with one philosophy, but Stoicism was very heavily influenced his thinking and writing. So they often quote him as well, because he wrote himself a diary. The quote is, "At this moment you aren't on a journey, but wandering about, being driven from place to place, even though what you seek, to live well, is found in all places. Is there any place more full of confusion than the forum? Yet even there you can live at peace if needed." And then it talks about how he's saying, you can always wait for the perfect moment. You can always wait for the perfect moment, but there's no such thing as the perfect moment. The perfect moment is now. The perfect moment's never going to come. It's there's another quote by the Army that is, a plan 50% done today, 50% ready, executed today, is better than a plan 100% ready, executed tomorrow. Oof. All right. It seems like we're sliding off of the novel into other discussions. So let's go back to the novel really quickly. I don't know if we're done. We can have a further discussion in the last 10 minutes about maybe reading poetry and whatnot. Actually, I'm going to read you guys a poem at the end of this by Whitman. And I want to explain why I couldn't do it yesterday, because yesterday was actually James Baldwin's birthday, which would have been awesome to discuss this novel yesterday. So yes, let's get back to this book really quickly. Hi, it's Dory. I'm sorry if that's not your handle or name, but it's XO, it's Dory XO. So, hi, we are on If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. So my final thoughts of the novel, because I feel like we talked a lot about it that last hour, and then since we had less to read technically for this time, I'm really happy we read this. You should totally jump back in. We love this book. Now, we're not there yet. Anything else that anyone wants to say about this novel, something they loved in it, some sort of quote, anything? This is the time, because in a couple minutes I think we're going to switch to... I watched the movie and reading the book was such a pleasure. Both are incredible. Todo desde Venezuela, afortunadamente consigue el libro, pero no terminado, pero la próxima intentaré en inglés. Ay, qué bueno. Gracias por intentar y ser parte del club, y nos vemos la próxima vez. Esperamos su voz. Read it, I already loved it. I think we should all have a sister like Ernestine. Yeah, important. Reading. Tisha's mom loved it. So important. And I will make everyone I know read this book. And I will also say this. This is a book that should be read again. And should be visited again. I think everyone should read this book. Beautiful. You know, I loved how honest and straightforward it was. Odin's Raven. It's a sick name. It's interesting. When I was first starting to really study acting, the teacher I had, who was an awesome actor, he had this quote that he would say often, and I didn't understand it at the time. But you say that, and I'm like, that's what he meant. It's like artists make simplicities out of complexities. You could say it the other way around, but I think anyone could do that, make things more and more complicated. kind of like Albert Einstein says, you only know if you truly understand something if you can explain it to a 7-year-old. And in a way, that ability to simplify is cool. So in that, it's like he simplified everything. There was no noise. It was clear. It was pure. Yes, Carolina. I think we read Paulo Coelho. We read The Alchemist. We loved his novels, his book, and I do have another one that it's on the shelf that I have to read. Esfuerzo para estar aquí. Bueno, muchas gracias por estar aquí, y si sigues leyendo y sigues practicando, vas a aprender y vas a saber más, y después nos vas a estar enseñando cosas en inglés y en español. Fonny and Daniel was truly pure. After all these years, they came back together. Just can you bring them for each other? In a way, Daniel foreshadows Fonny's future. Wow, I didn't think about that. He's like the bad omen. He shows up, tells him this terrible thing, and then he's like, I hope this never happens to you. And then it happens to him. In a way, it's like preparing us to deal with that. And it's interesting because you feel for Fonny when Daniel's telling you, you're like, oh, I feel terrible. And then when it happens to Fonny, I think you kind of look at Daniel in another light again. It's, yeah. You did, Anna Catherine, as I remember. Wow, crazy. And yes, I felt so bad for those sisters, and that Fonny's whole family. That whole family, something was. But in a way, if you think about it, the righteousness that they held themselves to, they were. I believe that they mentioned that the sisters were lighter skinned. Am I wrong about that? Daniel didn't have any support at all. In fact, he had to support a bunch of other people. Fonny had Tish and had her family. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so they, hold on, what was that question? Bad for the sisters. What was I saying? Oh, but in a way, the disdain or contempt that existed in that family, I think also has to do with how they were trying to elevate themselves to maybe not. I think whiteness, the way the mom carried herself, wouldn't let herself be seen in a certain way, and the way the sisters were also righteous in that way. It was like that self-loathing that Baldwin was talking about through Fonny's family, and that self-love that he was talking about through Tish's family. So that juxtaposition, that contrast that exists in the two people we follow. Oh my God, that's like two sides of a coin. That's beautiful. Wow. That's cool, right? He's putting us in the middle of these two opposites, and we don't realize that we're bouncing between them. We find this disdain for Fonny's family because they disdain themselves, and we find this love for Tish's family because they love themselves and they love each other and they want to spread that love. Wow, super cool. Biggest expression of love in every form. Yeah, I would say that. I can't say biggest. I don't like to put things in absolutes, but I will say a beautiful expression of love in every form. It's layered. This love discussion, it's really cool. And I love that in Tish's family, there was never a fear of showing love. Fonny's dad and Fonny, they never showed that love. maybe they did, but in different ways. Tish's family was so open with it, so available with it, in a way that Fonny's family never could be. That was beautiful. Wow. Masterwork. That's just amazing. So we have about 14 minutes left. I want to stay on time. Dory, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad everyone's chilling. He wasn't anybody's, and that's a crime in this fucking free country. Yeah. Love that line. Oh wow, the way I just went, yeah, it reminded me of like one of my acting teachers. It's weird. I don't want to be that. Not that. No, it just felt very like, yeah, wow, yeah. It just felt very. Hi, Gloria. So, and then it also shows that, like, even though Fonny grew up in that place that was colder, it doesn't mean he didn't understand warmth. You know? Didn't seek it. Wow. Maybe it also prepared him for prison in a way. In a way? I don't know. I'm getting too... Yeah. So, thank you everyone for another fantastic novel to put up on the Rosende Reads bookshelf. Next week we are going to be starting. Well, this reading we're starting now is going to be very difficult for a lot of us. I want everyone to know that the lives for the next book will not be shared. I want everyone to feel as though they can say and we can have this conversation freely. I'm hesitant to have something that's going to be this. Yeah, I know. Drinking a lot of water. Hey, Stella. You okay? You're drinking a lot of water. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's a good thing. I just want to make sure you're feeling okay. Yeah? Okay. So, what I was trying to say, the next book we're reading is White Fragility. Sensitive, yes, I want to say there's a lot of potential for learning, for growth, for people getting offended, for saying things offensive, for making mistakes. This is going to be a very interesting discussion. I want you to know that it is a risk for all of us to have this discussion on the internet openly because it's a sensitive discussion. And I know many of us either are just starting our education, haven't started, or are well into our education and understanding of the systemic oppression, racism that exists in America. And this book speaks directly to that and how we can approach it, which means it's going to be a difficult conversation. I want to make sure that everyone understands this. If you wish to not take part, I recognize that. I also want you to know I'm not going to be sharing that live on my Instagram. It's not going to stay there forever. I'd be completely lying to you if this conversation specifically around this book didn't make me anxious. I don't want to say nervous. I don't want to say, I want to say a little anxious because of the potential here for all of us to make mistakes. But that shouldn't keep us from attempting and working hard and learning from and then growing past those mistakes. And it's important to be having these conversations, and it's important to open the door for these conversations and to make them more common and more understood. And it's not only willing to learn, it's willing to unlearn as well. And I think that's one of the things I'm recognizing as an American who was indoctrinated into this country through its education system. That a lot of it is unlearning the things that were burned into you as a kid. Things that you don't even recognize because it's so part of the system or part of, it's almost subconscious because of how long it's been there. So I want everyone to be aware of that. I want everyone to be sensitive to that, but I also want everyone to feel, I can't ask you to feel comfortable. because I don't feel fully comfortable. But I can ask for your courage. And I can ask for your desire, for your willingness to work through this with everyone. I'm glad that we've had this many books before to create this community. So now I'm excited that we'll get to move forward together through this. So once again, the title of the book is White Fragility: Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. What is white fragility? In this groundbreaking and timely book, anti-racist educator Robin DiAngelo deftly illuminates the phenomenon of white fragility, referring to the defensive moves that white people make when challenged racially. This book is going to challenge a lot of the things that we feel are immediate responses. I was once told that your immediate response is what you were taught to think. If you don't listen to that response, the next option is your choice. So this brings up those ingrained responses and is teaching us how to subdue those, put them out, and then slowly come back, build up better institutions. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Because there's a video I want to show. I'm getting all over the place, but I've told you guys I've been trying to play golf more. There's a golfing instructor that I follow on Instagram that he posted an image to try to understand what it's like to break a bad habit. And what he did is he took a French press, like a coffee French press thing that was dirty, and he put it in a sink and just turned the faucet on. So slowly the water is entering the sink, entering the French press, and you see the coffee slowly come out. And it's like a 4-minute video before the entire French press is just clean, clear water. And that's what it's going to be like to root out this indoctrinated systemic oppression. It's going to be like pouring water into that French press and waiting for it slowly to get underneath all the things we've learned and slowly push it out. So, and challenge racially, white fragility is characterized by emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and by behaviors including argumentation and silence. These behaviors in turn function to reinstate white racial equilibrium and prevent any meaningful cross-racial dialogue. In this in-depth examination, DiAngelo explores how white fragility develops, how it protects racial inequality, and what we can do to engage more constructively. So, hey Tess, I know you've already read this one. Is it a hard read? Do you think we should start off in smaller bites, or do you think?
It's not a hard read. My friends and I did it in 2 sections just because it's like you want to be able to have time to absorb it.
Yeah.
So we split it up into half and half, basically.
Half and half. So when Tessa read it, she read it with her entire acting class. They've all been, they've worked together as a group to develop an anti-racist curriculum of reading, which I think is very inspirational. And I would actually, I would challenge a few of you to see if you could do something similar, whether it's learning about the systemic inequalities that exist in your own country and finding out if there's ways that you can educate in a community very similar, or if it's trying to learn more about this country or the systemic oppression that exists here. There's a lot of knowledge that can be happening, and as you all know, I find reading books in a group and community experience provides for a lot more insight than just reading alone. But when they read it, they were all students that had gone to a 4-year, very intensive university together, so they had a dialogue and a vocabulary with which they spoke. So them reading faster makes more sense. I want to slow down for us because I know we have some people reading that are American, that aren't people of all different ages, connections to the English language, whether it be through mother tongue or third language they know. So I think we should do this. Oh, no, thank you. I was obsessed with the idea of fair skin. I never understood it. Exactly. So I think me see if there's something around 50 pages. Yeah. So for Sunday, because today's already Monday, we're only going to have 6 days to read. We're going to read the first 50 pages, including the foreword. So it's around 60-something pages. So the first 50 pages is also up to chapter 4. Up to chapter 4. If anyone would like to tweet that, I will retweet it. For the person that was asking, I'm sorry, I can't remember the handle. I remember the picture. It was Buttercup from Powerpuff Girls. Yeah, I will retweet that, and I will be posting that via retweet. So, you can find it there.
That's just a third of the book.
Yeah, it's like around a third. Yeah.
You could
Probably do more? Well, we can decide that, I think, after.
start reading.
Yeah, I think we decide, because it's 155 pages. So, a third of the book, c'est parfait. Yeah, so once again, I will be saving this live, but like I've said, for the next one I won't. Unless we decide after that we think we should. But we will let that be an open dialogue for all of us. Because I know that this next conversation, it might be one of the more difficult books and conversations we have. And that's okay. I'm ready to take that risk. And I hope all of us are. Thank you. Thank you, Maddie. I've been practicing my French. So once again, I want to thank all of you for reading along, for literally this discussion helped me discover a lot of what this book was about, which is so cool. I will post in my story my morning reads for everyone that's curious. With this next book, take your time. In acting, we use this term for dropping in, whether it's drop into your voice, or if it's drop into the scene, or to let what's happening, let it seep into the roots so that you really understand it. Let this be a book that you do that with. Don't try to read it all in one sitting. I might do that because that's what I do when I'm lazy, but I'm going to try not to be lazy, because this book does have a lot to teach us. So I want us all to be a little bit more aware of that for this, at least the beginning. And if you find that, okay, I'm okay with it. No, that was weird. It said it was positive connection. I don't know what that was. So once again, thank you guys for this book club. I look forward to next week. Please tweet me the things we'll be reading. I will retweet for everyone. White Fragility, as of right now, is the last book in our BLM introduction series. I call it an introduction series because 3 books is not enough to learn anything about anything. Neither is 6 or 7 conversations. This is going to be a lifetime thing. Not only to hopefully stop this problem, but it's also to hopefully make the world better so that these problems eventually get looked at as things that happened back then. Way back then. Wow, I can't believe people ever thought like that. That would be amazing to happen one day. So, as we continue into this, keep being curious, keep being open, keep questioning things, keep seeing. And when I say that, I don't mean just seeing. I mean like seeing. Let seeing be full body. Let it be sensory. Let yourself acknowledge all of these things. Keep growing, keep learning, and most importantly, continue to be positive forces of change in your communities. I will see you all next week on Sunday. I will post the time, probably 11, soon. Share me the tweets. Thanks very much. Have a great week.